So let's talk about how do we build relationships in a virtual world? So how do we build relationships in a virtual world? And for most of us, even now, this is still new. We've lived our entire lives not really thinking about online interaction the way that we have to today. Building relationships in a virtual world, we're drawing upon those things that we know from our real world, so to speak. And now let's just think about it. There are only 4 ways that we have contact with the world. And we're going to talk about each of these in a virtual world perspective, so to speak. So what do we do, how we look, what we say, and how we say it. Let's start with what we do. And we're talking about a virtual environment right now. How often have you gotten into a Zoom meeting? It's supposed to start at 11 o'clock in the morning. You're in, people are kind of strolling in. Could be a salesperson, could be a team member, whatever. I mean, the part of what we are demonstrating to people and part of that credibility and that trust is how are we presenting ourselves? Personally, I always try to get to a Zoom meeting if I can at least 5 minutes early, just so I'm there and I'm ready. And what message does that send to the person that I'm meeting with or that we're meeting with? What it sends is, you're important. Your time is important. I value you. Being prepared. Sometimes we'll share something on a screen. And have we run it before? Are we having technology problems? But taking the time in advance to practice and make sure something works, especially if I'm presenting, especially if I've got a group of people there who are waiting for me, and I was like, oh, geez, it's like, well, wait a second. Why didn't you just test your PowerPoint in advance? Why didn't you test a share screen in advance? I remember many times if I had an interview or an important meeting, I might even drive to that location in advance, understand where it was, understand how long it was going to take to get there. The same thing is true if I've got a presentation or a meeting. To come prepared is critically important. Giving appreciation, clearly we've talked about that. And then, of course, going the extra mile, doing that thing you can do to really connect with people to help them understand. I think about how we look. I mean, all of us, if we're going to meeting with people, we're sensitive in person to how we look. We're sensitive to the environment that we're in, to the how people are going to perceive us. And the same thing is true in an online world. Really to take the time to think about how am I being perceived? How am I looking? How are my presentations, my screen shots looking, and those types of things, my slides? Are we thinking about? This is one where this is a person who's giving a presentation or an interview on BBC, and taking the time to straighten out the things around me, taking the time to make sure that I have proper lighting and so forth. And so that when people are seeing me, they're seeing my best self, because all those things go to credibility in a virtual world, just as they would in a real world. But taking a time to think about asking someone, I will often ask someone, how does this look? Does the lighting look good? Does the sound look good? I just invested in a external microphone just because people were saying, your microphone is sound a little far away. Those are small things we could do that go to how we sound, but really let's be thinking about how we look. And there are cues, there are visual cues that we can keep in mind when we're communicating. Are we looking at the camera? Are we looking someplace else? When we're sitting down, especially at a desk, are we just sitting there? Are we leaning back? Or if I'm presenting, I'm leaning forward. Do I have intensity? Do I have that eagerness of just that wanting to connect and wanting to share something that I'm excited about? Facial expressions. I mean, have you been in a meeting with someone where they're presenting and it's just like this, the face is like this, the energy like this? No, we can, just like we're in an in-person meeting, we even need to bring it higher. We talk about having a 20% higher energy level in an online environment. And we think also about what are the distractions that people have when they're virtual? Do I have my cell phone with me? Do I have different things? Can I be checking my email while you're on the screen? We've really got to work to keep people engaged. And part of that is how we look, how we can communicate, how we stay connected to people. If we're in a face-to-face meeting, a lot of times people wouldn't do something. They're not going to stop in the meeting and start checking email where you're sitting right there. But do they do that in an online? Of course, we all do it sometimes. So using gestures, using body movement, using energy, all these things will keep people engaged so that we can present effectively and we can really give off that appearance, that credible appearance, build credibility and build trust. Then there's a substance of what it is we say. So is it just my opinion or is it research? This is research from Dale Carnegie from 14 countries across the world, or whatever it might be. This is McKinsey research. It's always valuable to have something external to point to, but what is the evidence that I might be able to support too? Whether it's data, whether it's an exhibit, whether it's something, but what are the things that I can point to help support what it is I'm saying so I can communicate and connect more effectively to the people with whom I'm talking? Asking relevant questions. How many times have any of us, been in a meeting where someone's going on and on and on? I mean, is it easier or is it harder to just talk and go on in an online? Sometimes it could be easier. We just go on, but stop. Remember, we're talking to people here, and are we asking questions? Are we asking thoughtful questions? Are we asking questions that demonstrate that I thought about this meeting or this interaction before I got there? Or did I just have breakfast, run downstairs, and here I am? I mean, all of this goes to credibility. All of it goes to trust and relationship. And again, conciseness. There's the old adage about, I would have written you a short letter, but I didn't have time, right? I mean, it's easier sometimes to just put something out there, but taking the time to be concise, to be thoughtful, to be intentional, critically important. And then, of course, there's the how we say it. The language, the way that we talk, the presentation skills. I mean, there are courses that we can take on online presenting, and there are things that we can do. There are books that we read, there's videos. How do we invest in ourselves to make sure that we are presenting and coming off in a polished way? Remember, this is something I would think that we're going to be in an online world, so to speak, not just through COVID. I mean, do we think that we're going to be going back exactly to the way things were before? We're always going to be face-to-face, or will there be a lot more meetings that will be online? As professionals, it is our, not just opportunity, it's our responsibility to invest in ourselves and make sure that we're giving ourselves the competitive advantage so that we can communicate effectively. How we say it is just absolutely critical. So really, we've got those 4 different ways that we can communicate that the world perceives us. We can work on all 4 of those.